Robin Z of Borderline Me.
And Melanie, Skene, master puppeteer. I want to welcome everybody for coming, and also thank the Yumi Gallery and you guys for filming this. This art exhibit came about as, actually it was a dream. So I had done a one-woman show called Borderline Me after that, and it was the first time in 2014, I think, or 2013, that I had said out loud that I was a human trafficking survivor. From that, the show went really well, won Emerging Artist of the Year, and eventually, a couple of years later, I decided to write a book called Beyond the Edge, which is more detailed. I'm not sure if, as a result of writing the details, inspired the dream, but I had this dream and I shared it with Melanie because I always wanted to work with her. And between Melanie, myself, and Liam, we created this art installation. You want to, I don't know, say something?
Okay. Well, yes, so Borderline Me, I remember when you did that a few years ago, it was like the first show you did was like 10 minutes, and it was like, I don't know, made me cry then, made me cry every time I've seen it since, and it's grown. It's been really fascinating to see it grow. And then, but for this exhibit, so I remember, yeah, we've been wanting to work together, and then one day you called me, you told me you had this dream, you asked me, do I want to do this? And I'm like, okay.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I don't ask a lot of questions sometimes, especially if I have someone that I really want to work with, that I feel comfortable with. And so she gave me a bit of ideas, and then we met and brought Liam in and had a few meetings, and then we met with Bryce, and it was like, okay.
So we were doing it.
Yep. It was a little bit like, oh my gosh, we're doing it.
And I think the interesting thing is that the opening show fell on Valentine's Day.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. All right, so a lot, this is a hot topic. It's in the media all over the place. And, however, it's not a new topic. So my experience personally was before there was even, first of all, we didn't have smartphones. The term human trafficking hadn't even been coined. It was an era where if a woman was raped, it's because her skirt was too short. And even though we still struggle with that to a certain degree, we have come a long way. So there was no agencies supporting survivors of this kind of trauma back then. It is an honor that there's, I sit on two coalitions, one with SAVIS, which is the Halton region, and also the Hamilton Coalition for Human Trafficking. Interestingly enough, Halton region doesn't think it happens in their neighborhood because it's Halton region. And it does. Ontario is one of the top provinces for human trafficking. Yeah. Which is not something to be all that proud of. Like, we're first,
Yeah.
right? And there's a lot of resources here. Liam had brought in people to read out the statement. So we sat down, we did all the statements together. It starts off very lovey-dovey and looks like how any relationship would start. And it's great until it's not good anymore. Groomers are incredibly talented at manipulating and reaching their goals. The truth is that the sentencing now in Canada is still pretty low. You get more time for drug possession than you do, or selling drugs, than you do from selling human beings here, right? Which is really frustrating and sad. you know, and I look at the government now who has done, you know, they're supposed to be investing, I think it's $3 million into the police department for things like the human trafficking department, which they do need more staff. In Hamilton, we have 3 officers on that team. And just so that you have an idea, if you reach out to an officer, if their job is to make a connection with the survivor. Their job isn't necessarily around, the main focus isn't charging the trafficker, it's getting the survivor to a safe place. So once you make a connection, doesn't mean that the woman or the boy is ready to exit. So they are on call 24/7. Like I've gone to meetings at the police department where the officer has come in and she was up at 3 o'clock in the morning because somebody called her. And for 3 officers to be handling that, that's huge. However, at the same time, he may be putting this money in, but he's also cut off victim services support, cut off places like Sasha, cut off housing, and cut off anything that has to do with supporting women. So it's, something's unkosher with Doug Ford in general. That's my 2 that's my 2 cents.
And one of the other things on that, I don't have a lot of experience with trafficking. I've learned a lot, you know, working with Robin and listening to some of her stories. And then I decided to do her body, all that white papers articles that I found, which are mostly local, certainly in Canada. So I ended up, you know, reading a lot more than I, you know, kind of would like to, because it's pretty awful, but just as how much there is, but that goes on. But the other thing that's interesting is that the connections that I guess sometimes a lot of people don't realize, that there are these kind of interconnections between different supports. So one of the issues is that sex work in itself is still illegal and highly stigmatized. And from what I have read is that moving people from a situation of being trafficked to moving them out of that is a lot more difficult when sex work is still illegal and stigmatized, which I found really interesting. So these kinds of things are like really deeply connected. You know, sexual assault and that, and it's like, we're going to invest in human trafficking, but we're going to defund the sexual assault center. It really is
Heartbreaking and frustrating.
Nonsensical, but sometimes those connections are not always public or seen, or whether voluntary or involuntarily. It's really important to look at that as a whole.
Yeah. I think one of the other issues is that people who are targeted people who are groomed and targeted are as young as 11, 12, 9, 8. It doesn't matter. We're getting into middle schools. High schools have been really difficult to get into. And a lot of times they'll say, well, because it doesn't happen in our school. They are the biggest target, the youth, and so easily manipulated. And so, you know, it's hard enough for a grown-up to get out of, to stand up and speak their mind. For a youth, it's like, once they're roped in emotionally, because he loves me, he understands me, he gets me, I've told him everything. And trying to present the topic to mothers, fathers, grandparents it's a difficult one because it's scary. I mean, I'm a parent now, and I wanted to lock my daughter in the attic, but that's not legal, and it's also considered abuse. So you're kind of caught with your hands tied behind your back as far as how to deal with this. Some questions? Anybody has some questions about this as we go
How do
along.
you explain it to your daughter? Does she know your background?
My daughter knows my background. She does not know the details. I never encouraged her to read the book.
Okay.
Though I'm sure she'll read it, you know, maybe when I'm 90 and she's 30, I think. I didn't have her till I was 42, so, you know.
But she's been at your shows.
She's been to a couple of shows, but the shows, you know, just skim over more. And even then, she was not crazy about it. I didn't go into detail with my daughter, but she was aware that I was a survivor of human trafficking. We talked a little bit about, you know, safety, red flags, what to do, how to do it. And sometimes, because teens are such a pain in the ass sometimes, and so much know-it-all, it's just you want to bang your head against the wall.